I think it's about time that we get going here. We are very conscious of the time, and we're going to keep this fairly short, but I want to start off by welcoming everyone to our first World of Work webinar. The World of Work was started as an idea where it's going to aim to be a central place for people looking for information, contacts, or a network, all having to do with the workplace. So it's a curated place both online and through events or webinars such as this. If it weren't for the pandemic, our initial idea was that this was going to be an in-person, maybe breakfast event, so we could all grab a coffee and sit in a room and have a couple of presenters talking about different subjects. But obviously, because of the nature of the world we're in right now, that's not possible. But keep an eye out. Hopefully, in the future, when we're all allowed to meet again, we'll do that as well. The idea for these events is they're short in nature, so very focused talks. Primarily consisting of three, maybe a couple more in the future, but three people from different organizations holding different positions, talking about three different topics, but all ultimately relating to the world of work or to a workplace. So as this is our first webinar or event, we'd absolutely encourage feedback on the topics, on the content, on the way that we ran the webinar. And we'd love for you to get in touch if you have any ideas for future events, want to be involved anyway, want to write an article for our little website. We will be posting contact details for each of the presenters throughout the presentation and again on the last slide. So please do reach out to our presenters if you have any follow-up questions directly. You can also reach out to me if you need anything. So without further ado, I'm going to get our presentation up here and then pass it over to our first presenter. There we are. Okay, I'm going to unmute Katie. Katie is an experienced HR professional. She's going to talk to us a little bit about the changing role of HR within an organization, not just in light of what's going on right now, but in general. So I'm going to unmute Katie and we are going to pass it off to her. Oh, maybe Katie, can you unmute yourself? Is that possible?
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, hello, everyone. Thank you, Alex, for the intro. So my name is Katie. I have been working in HR for the past years. For most of those years, I was working at various tech companies, and then prior to kind of the switch into HR, I actually worked at Salesforce in sales. So much of my career has been in the tech space. I just recently started at a creative agency. It's called No Fixed Address. And so this was quite a big change for me. Our company is essentially built on the foundation that there is no fixed approach, no fixed way of doing things. And they really like to take each client and each project kind of differently, and they're very agile. And they're really just kind of trying to disrupt that agency space. So when I took the job in HR, I tried to kind of find a way to align HR with the company's kind of foundation about this idea of no fixed way of doing things. Next slide, Alex. So I've kind of come up with three things here. There's so many more that we could talk about, but just because of time, these are the three that I thought of. So these are kind of three different pillars for a more progressive way of thinking about HR, and then staying on that theme of kind of no fixed approach, no fixed address. Like how am I going to disrupt the HR world? So next one. And so, yeah, so I think first one is, you know, it's not all about admin. I think HR in the past has been a lot of just administrative activities. And I think in the past 3 years, the most success that I found is when I've tried to move past that. So really focus on those business objectives, those metrics, ROI, data, how to use data to make decisions. And so really trying to move past that. I think, you know, when you can make your HR function revenue generating, that's really where you're going to get the most impact. It's where you're going to get the most buy-in. It's where your leadership team, your board of directors, and your employees are really going to start to see the value that you bring. When you're just doing administrative tasks behind the scenes, no one really sees that. So if you can be more forward facing and you can be more progressive and kind of push through and help to show the true value you bring, that's kind of when you're going to find your most success. Next one. Yeah, and then another one here is really going beyond those employment perks. So really trying to create initiatives that support people, their lifestyles, inclusivity, acceptance, and tolerance for everyone at your organization. We support lots of people, and everyone has a different circumstance, a different background, different things going on in their lives. So if you can really work towards making programs that are very flexible and adaptable so that it really supports everyone in your organization, that's really going to be where you see the most success. And just creating that safe space for any person to join your organization, free of that fear of different kind of things that might, bullying or shaming or violence. So just really creating that safe space for everyone to be part of with no fear is really going to be where you get the most out of your people, and you're going to get, them to be able to reach their potential. And then kind of going back to that business objective, when your people are in this type of space and they're meeting their great potential, that's where you're going to get your high performing employees, and that's when you're again going to get to those business objectives, that HR kind of function that's revenue generating, because your employees are working at their best, and it's going to help achieve those business objectives faster, more efficiently, etc. So really kind of hitting that bottom line again. Next one, Alex. And then the last one is kind of the big picture here. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all human, and our employees and our workers, their intentions are good. And I think everyone kind of makes mistakes, they learn from them, and that's how everyone develops and that's how everyone grows. So I think giving your employees the opportunity to, work on challenging projects and initiatives, and again, creating a space where it's okay to fail is really, really important to kind of help your employees grow and move forward. And then I think if that type of environment is presented to them where we're pushing you, you're challenging you, it's okay to fail, they're going to feel super supported, trusted, and respected. And in turn, they're going to be so committed to your organization to do the best that they can for you. And then I think lastly, I'll just finish with, I think, as people who support people in an organization, the best thing you can do is just assume positive intent from them. And I think they'll really feel that and do the best work they can for you. So thank you. It's very short and sweet. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me. That's my email there. Happy to have any discussions or follow-up or questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. That I know a lot of people think that HR sometimes fits into a particular bucket, but you and your organization and several others that are watching this, I know are really committed to fostering that progressive HR approach. So I think that was really helpful for them to hear a similar viewpoint on that. So as Katie said, there's her email address. We're going to post it again at the end. Also, feel free to reach out to her on LinkedIn if you want to connect that way. So next up, we're going to hear from George, and he's going to speak about any kind of, or several of the developments that's going on in the legal world that relate to the workplace and the world of work. Go ahead, George.
Thanks, Alex. I think we've got a cover slide to scroll to. What I wanted to try to do is first just mention that the world of work idea and website, has a lot of resources, and some of those are touching on themes that Katie has covered. And just as she's explained about HR and the HR function having to become something other than just a cost center and other than just an administrative function, I think the whole idea here is to create a group of like-minded people. So we will see in the legal realm that I'll go through how we have changing workplaces. It's fairly obvious to start, but just so we've got some context, we're in a different world, not just because of the pandemic, but the pandemic has certainly accelerated that. And what we're also seeing is different ways of working. So people are working at different locations, using different methods, with different processes, and sometimes with different personnel. And my message today is that the legal world is catching up. And maybe, in the roughly 25 years that I've been doing this, we've seen in the course of 25 weeks just as much change as we've seen in the 25 years before. I was just reminded as I was getting rolling this morning of a presentation I gave back in 1997 in Vancouver, and we were talking about concepts like remote work, and we were talking about ideas, and many of those ideas are very similar to some of the things you've heard around this no fixed address or agile processes. Maybe the dawn that we've been hearing about for a long time is now upon us. Can we just flip to the next slide, please? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to really try and just cover in 3 slides some themes. We could have picked any number of specific developments, but I'm trying to encapsulate a few things. Just to start the concept, the working assumption here, I have a perspective about the law. Law is about legal relationships. Those relationships are the relationships between people, places, and things. Lots of other people deal with things or places. Workplace law and the world of work is all about people. So what we're doing here is, if we focus on people, what the law seems to be doing quite significantly now is this accelerated trend about how people will be dealt with. Great information. If some of you haven't seen it, if you go to the labor force survey and information from Statistics Canada, that'll show you the profound changes to Canadian people, workers. Something like 5.5 million Canadians have been impacted by the pandemic. That means that either they've lost work, they've got less work, they're in new roles. And that is an unbelievable number of people with a kind of a workplace event. The number of people working has both fallen, risen back again, and now here we are where it's being adjusted yet again, and that's probably going to continue for a number of months. A number of those developments will be probably impacted by some changes we've seen from some legal decisions. I've called it the Uber decision. This got a lot of attention, where a decision about the status of an ability to launch a case for an Uber driver based in Toronto was rendered by the Supreme Court of Canada in the middle of the summer. Again, I just want to set up the concept. There's an idea in Canadian law that talks about the living tree. So the law is taken to be, and this came out of a famous case establishing the legal rights of women. And it talks about our law being a living tree that's capable of growth and expansion. So this case is that living tree coming and actually living in the law of the workplace employment law. The case involved a man named Heller. It's a 207-page decision, so I'm going to try to sort of just give you the highlights in 207 words or less. Basically what happened is he was doing a food delivery gig. He signed up by going on the app. He clicked through, and that led him agreeing to and being bound by the standard form contract. When he then wanted to have a case proceed to say that I'm not being provided with certain rights on termination or while employed, that contract said he had to proceed with an arbitration in the Netherlands because of the corporate structure of the company. That meant that when he tried to sue in the Ontario courts, his case was objected to in first instance on the basis that there was an arbitration provision. Eventually, what the claim has made out, it hasn't been decided, but what it becomes is a review of the enforceability and the viability of that type of provision. And the finding is that you can't rely on that clause in contract because it is unconscionable. And that means that it's both unfair and it's not going to be enforced. So even though we don't have a decision on the merits, what it shows is we've got this safety net of employment law processes and the courts, which are going to protect this broader category of workers. And when we sort of measure it against what it means for regulation, it means that our workplace laws will extend widely, and so-called independent contractors may have rights that people didn't expect. We can go to the next slide, please. Now, to talk a little bit more concretely about some of those evolving rights, Walksdale is a case from the Ontario Court of Appeal. It was issued in June of this year. And this is a case that has essentially blown up what many would have expected to be the prevailing rules with respect to employment contracts. So the case was a person who had a contract, and the contract itself was terminated without cause. And the recognition was that in the contract itself, there was a provision which had flawed wording about the cause provision, and more specifically, the failure to use the just cause wording that's required by the Ontario Employment Standards Act. So even though the employer was not relying upon or proceeding to terminate under the bad clause, that was enough, said the Court of Appeal, if the bad clause is in the contract at all, to throw out the entire contract. So what it says to me is that there are many, many contracts out there where, even though provisions are not even going to be relied upon or used, there's a problem, there's a gap. And it really opens up this inequality of bargaining power concept that we see in the kind of theoretical, perhaps, way in the Uber decision. We see it actually being applied very concretely in a decision that's sort of issued, they're both issued in June of 2020. And what that also says is that can't easily avoid both statutory obligations that we have to employees, possibly further claims that people will be employees, and more importantly, we are probably looking at the prospect of common law cases for a much broader group and with much higher value than we might have expected before. I want to just tie back to HR and say, having good HR practices is not always the 100% solution, but employees who don't feel like they're being dealt with, properly in the workplace while they're working, might just be the ones that are more aggressively going to pursue these kind of claims. Just ask you to consider that. Okay, next slide, please. And I want to just talk about, again, I'm old enough to remember when we called this electric lawyering. I think we call it electronic these days. But what we've seen quite substantially in the legal realm, and we've seen this with clients in their own areas of work, is that we've got substantial changes to both work practices, and then in some cases we have legislation that's been changing. It's been happening fast, and what I would suggest is that some of these changes are temporary, but a lot of them are not. A lot of them are going to be permanent. Methods of doing work, how we get documents or deals done, and then what the rules are around documents. So the legal realm, let's be candid, is one of the last bastions of paper, process, and sort of impediments to speed to get things done. And that's changing very quickly. So as an example, earlier this month, we've seen from the Ontario Superior Court of Justice a practice direction. It amends an earlier one. They're now using something called case lines. That means that we're going to see a requirement to e-file. And some of these are sort of small anecdotes, but they build up together. So for example, there will be a requirement that people include their email address in legal filings. There's only one reason you're going to do that, it's because it's going to be used. There's also requirements about how documents are named. So there's naming conventions and processes. There's portals that deal with how it is to be filed. And then there's also an approach around what you do to register for certain steps in the process, and what you have to do to be available for things like virtual hearings. So Zoom isn't just going to be used sort of for social or kind of periodic interaction with colleagues. We're actually using it for legal processes. I myself have done a number of mediations by Zoom. We're developing a whole set of processes about how to have those become more effective. And what that means is in-person processes are going to continue to diminish. The other thing to talk about just a little bit is some of the removal of formality on things like signatures. So using processes like DocuSign, or sometimes even just using emails that are properly constructed that then are validated with telephone calls or Zoom or other means. And then we've got an actual sanctioning of that in Ontario by the Law Society, but it's happened all over the world, where we've seen people recognizing that a valid and enforceable document can be done through electronic means. And again, we've even seen press reports that that's being considered for wills. I'm not going to get into all the complexities there, but the point is that if that is something that can be entirely digital, basically any legal process can. So what I would suggest to anyone, whether it's looking at the legal realm or otherwise, these lien processes are coming to your office. I mean, they may have already arrived in the context of the pandemic. I don't think they're going to leave. And I think these kind of changes to both the work processes and some of these substantive legal aspects are just going to be permanent. I just wanted to conclude with a stat that may try to bring some of this together. The leading management consulting firm McKinsey has done various studies of the legal function, and they did a report in February of 2020, so right before the pandemic and the lockdowns that we're still in the middle of, or various restrictions. And they said that about 23% of the legal work that exists in the world can be automated. And what I would put to each of you is what we've seen in the last 6 months or so is it's being automated before our very eyes. So the prediction they made over some long path that this would happen over some number of years, it's been happening in the last 26 weeks. So I think that's quite significant, and I think we all need to change as these changes emerge. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you so much, George. That was excellent. Of course, it's these things that you and I chat about quite a bit in our office, but I'm sure most people on the line here joining us today found that very interesting from their perspective in the HR seats or recruiter seats or other that they fill. So lastly, and it may come as a surprise to some of you, but recruiters have been quite busy over the past several months, and Adele is going to speak to us about why you do need a recruiter, not just now, but in any time, pandemic or otherwise. So Adele, you can unmute yourself and take it away.
Thank you again for making the time to include me in this, and certainly hoping to share a little bit of my thoughts on what we've seen in the space literally over the last, I would say, come few months, few weeks. The question you asked, though, why do you need a recruiter? Quite frankly, the worst time to ask that question is actually when you need one. As we work through the why, you'll understand what I mean by the end of the 4 short slides that I actually have to show you. Someone once said to me, you always need a very good lawyer. Certainly George has probably been just a good testament to that, a good accountant, CPA, and a good recruiter. Never has there been wiser words, quite frankly, especially at this time, to actually test those networks. George, for example, has been there on speed dial for me many, many times over the last few weeks. Not just for me, but for clients, candidates asking questions. It's been a rapidly changing dynamic in the world, things that we have not seen before. So, making yourself almost known to a recruiter, not just when there's a crisis or a time like this with COVID. We were extremely busy dealing with a lot of sort of fires we were putting out. But as my point, if you had built up a network and rapport with a recruiter, it's very easy to pick up the phone. They know who you are, they know your background. You're not sort of starting over. Some people are great connectors, and they've mastered the skill and art of staying connected to the right people. Staying connected to the right people also means, like you would have a doctor. You don't just, knowing who your doctor is, they know you, the good, the bad, and the ugly. When is it serious, or when you just require a little Band-Aid or just a bit of TLC? That person has spent time talking to you, finding out more about you, getting to know you. So when something like a crisis, like COVID, anything happens, you can pick up the phone, ask them questions, even if it's just to get some sort of reassurance, peace of mind, taking away the risk. And even at the moment, very uncharted territories, as George was saying, rapidly changing dynamics in the market, and some decisions, some not even yet documented, which are certainly going to see a world of change there. But which brings me to the next slide. It's a little bit about yourself. Is why would you not want to know your worth? What is my worth question? Employers ask, they're keeping abreast of salaries, market conditions, not just at this time, but during planning, compensation, bonus time, number of different reasons. They're looking to expand, Do they have the right people on board? Likewise, yourself applying for a job as a candidate, clicking on a salary survey. When I talk about worth, I'm not talking about just purely the money aspect here. I'm talking about the way, you actually are treated by employees, some other aspects, the values, the respect, the little things sometimes that are not tangible. So it's almost like, sending your resume in online to a posting, expecting somebody amongst the 200-400 applications to actually get to know you. They don't know you. Let that recruiter be your ambassador and coach to help you get in front of them and actually, come to offer time, getting the offer you deserve and obviously looking for. Which again brings me probably to the next set of slides, just a laundry list of some, I would say, benefits to both employers and candidates, ironically. It's the knowledge that a recruiter can provide. As discussed in my opening line, the recruiter you work with obviously is a good one. It's a good network to have somebody who actually specializes in the field that you're in. Myself, for example, we work with CPAs. We could tell you everything you need to know about the current market conditions. They're constantly changing. Salary information, job-related skills, industry-specific knowledge that goes beyond a job description, with regards to a company, the culture, the fit, the hours, the work life, the demands. There's a couple of things that, a lot of people want to know that go beyond that. So the other part of that is networking and the relationships we have. When it comes to, D-Day, you want to know where to go. Recruiters know who to contact. They specialize in your field. They'll know exactly who to reach out with within their networks, and because they've got the relationships there. Then I talk about the personal connection. It goes back to having a recruiter. I talk on speed dial. It's kind of your go-to person. A little bit of an individual, personalized attention, because at different stages of your life, you're going to need different things. Sometimes work life is not important to you at this stage of your life, but different stage of your life, it's very important to you. So your growth, development, your personal circumstances obviously do impact your professional circumstances too. Then you talk about the support and the guidance. That's without saying. There is so much that gets provided to, candidates, to clients. I focus on the candidates predominantly because I feel that is typically where a lot of the times, you're the one making the change here. The employer is looking to hire somebody, and obviously they're trying to find the best person, the right fit. We do work on both ends. The support there, obviously, we give to our candidates is exceptional. Clients use us because they know we give them the support they need. We help them, prepare them. We don't do the resumes. We give them advice on resumes, feedback during the process, prepping them, every step of the way, even at offer time, making sure they're getting the best offer that they could possibly get based on where they are at that stage in their career and what the client's looking to offer. And then you talk about individual and sort of personalized side of it. Each one of us is unique. I mean, the whole concept of what we do is we're dealing with people. Everyone's on their own little journey. You ask yourself, the employer pays us a commission. Yes, they do. But they also know we put our candidates first, which makes us a little bit more genuine. And I really mean that because we truly care about, not just the cash reward on doing our job, but the joy we get when we actually influence someone's life and putting them somewhere that's going to impact them in a positive way. To me, you're listening to their story and how you can help them land somewhere where they'll be happy as well in the future. But just to conclude on all this, on the last slide, you'll see, I look at these two individuals on this mountain. Some individuals have bigger mountains to climb. We all have our own struggles. Recruiters are there to help you. If this has not been enough to convince you, just keep in mind, our advice is free. And what better connection to have to somebody, and it doesn't cost you anything. Likewise, employers who actually engage us, they know we put our candidates first. We're not in it for, as people say, you're in this for the money. It's not. You can pick up a genuine recruiter. Find somebody that you can network, that you feel confident in. They really do have your best interest at heart. And helping you, and as I said, let them be your ambassador and coach, representing you to get the best for you in this journey that you're looking to embark on. Just wanted to say thank you, Alex, for hosting today, George as well for inviting us, and Katie. And as I said, if you have any questions at any point, you've got my contact details. Reach out at any time as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adele. That was excellent. I'm just going to turn to our very last slide, which is of course, thank you for joining, everyone. We hope we didn't take up too much of your time today and you're able to leave this webinar with a little bit more information than you might have had at the outset. Of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg on what these three presenters have in terms of knowledge in their fields. So as mentioned at the beginning and throughout, please do not hesitate to get in touch with these three presenters or myself, even if you just want to connect and talk shop afterwards with a virtual coffee, or if you are looking for some concrete advice, please do get in touch. That is ultimately the main goal of this webinar and the world of work as a whole, is to create a network that everyone can bounce ideas off of each other and really use as resources later down the line. So thanks again, everyone. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. I think it's supposed to rain later, so hopefully everyone brought their umbrellas. That's in Toronto. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.